Hello Marvel Rivalers, my name is KarQ. Welcome to the weekly series of Marvel Rivals Hot Takes, where we look at your burning takes. Some of them are really not that burning, by the way. Some of these are very lukewarm or cold even, and we see if we agree or disagree. But the first one, we always start off these with reading my hot take from last week, opening that discussion first before moving on to yours. So last week, I said my weekly hot take: the support ultimate charge nerf from the mid-season 1.5 patch barely did anything. I still feel that all the defensive ults build way too fast, and the game could benefit from a global alt charge nerf to slow down the game a bit, let people poke a bit more in the neutral fighting game term, and let the hero kits outside of the ultimate shine a little bit more. Lots of replies here, decent amount of upvotes. Maybe not everybody agrees with me, and that's okay. I actually don't want people to agree with my take all the time, or I want a healthy discussion. So let's see what you guys have to say. Okay, here we go. I kind of agree, but I also feel like it could take away from the game's identity in terms of, like, you mean just not being able to use the super powerful ults all the time? No, I feel like that's not the case. You still have the ability. The frequency goes down slightly, but like it makes it feel more meaningful to me. But I see where you're coming from, but like I disagree with this one. I don't think it takes away from it at all. Ooh, okay. This next post says, I disagree with your take because of Luna specifically. Could be a player issue, but I'm noticing a lot of times where enemies are ulting and I check tab, our Luna is only at 90% ult charge, so we lose the fight. Of course, it could be biased, but I also think Siegel shared the same sentiment at some point, and I will latch onto that validation like a spoiled child to their third phone. I like the metaphor here. Is that the right word? Simile? Metaphor? In this specific scenario, I can understand that, where obviously if we only nerf the ult charge timing for defense or support specifically, you can't keep up with the pacing of how fast an offensive DPS ultimate comes. But at the same time, you often forget how often you just sit on your ultimate for like an extended period of time waiting for them to use it too. So this is the example where I guess the nerf could be felt, but I actually would argue more times than not, when people get their ultimate, they still sit on it for a bit and wait for a better opportunity. Not everybody is in line with like the perfect tempo ultimate. This is mostly like a first fight scenario where, like, let's say there's Storm hypothetically built her ultimate way faster than your Luna or whatever and pops her ult first. If that Storm is smart, she should be doing that simply because the other supports and everybody else the supports haven't caught up to how fast she built it up. But that being said, once the first team fight goes and then we have a cycle where like some people are halfway through, some people aren't, inevitably it kind of fixes itself in a way where people are just going to wait for the full charge anyways, and we're back to where we started. So the nerf, it did a little bit in the first fight is my takeaway point, but not so much once the game is rolling, and some people even sit on all 5 or 6 ults for the next fight anyways. Next post said, I specifically just want the mid ults to get an ult charge buff instead. Like, I've never felt danger from Hawkeye ulting, and Black Widow is only good with the team up. Well, the team up thing changed. Black Widow's ultimate, I mean, it still pops off with the Hawkeye team up, but it now gives them the vulnerability state where she can one shot. But I actually agree with this one. Like, if we're going to slightly nerf the frequency of ult charge across the board, you can make some of the more mid or bad ultimates feel a little bit more impactful without breaking their hero kit for sure. So I kind of get it. Most people here do tend to agree with me saying just slightly slow it down. When I say slightly benefit from a global charge nerf to slow it down, I say a bit. This will have to be fine-tuned, but you start with, like, let's say hypothetically another 33% across the board where, you know, there's 12 players, so many ultimates, and like the frequency of them goes down by 33% in terms of building it. But the usage of it will still depend on the players and when the right time is. Obviously, I have a lot of Overwatch bias, and Overwatch in 2016, their original iteration, they had incredibly fast building ultimates because we were allowed to play their classic mode recently, which brought back the 2016 patch, and the ultimates were just flying like crazy. Like, you realize how much better the game is in the modern days where things are slowed down a lot more, whereas you don't get the mass res and the grabs literally every fight, and it just becomes just a mass ability spam mess. And I think obviously Rivals is still early and we can enjoy it while it lasts, but I think for the longevity, I still am with my hot take. Slowly tune it down, but nothing too extreme. But you'd be surprised to see how much better the game may feel with just, you know, 33%, even 50% cut down on ultimates across the board. Let the other, the neutral, and let the hero kits and all the other abilities in their kit shine a bit more. So I'm pretty adamant on this take, but I like to see where you guys are going from. I'm mostly just reading the most upvoted replies to this. I fully agree. I think the ults in general are too centralizing, and most of the casts have plenty of tools to make them fun and set them apart without needing to press a big button every 2 minutes. While this would mostly be every like minute, I would say at this point with so many ults. As a Sue main, hearing everyone call for her ult to be nerfed or reworked, please do. It's actually the least interesting part of her kit and actually has nothing to do with why I actually play the character. I like this take, and I do like the take of slightly buffing the mid ult in exchange for lowering the frequency of all ults across the board. So yeah, let's move on to your takes now. Okay, first take here is kind of going with where I was going with mine. I'm gonna give my same hot take from the last video. The core of the problem with triple support is still unchanged. Nerfing the cost of support ults doesn't change the fact that they're mostly just in invulnerability ults, which is very unfun to play against when every team has at least one. I really think that most of them could lose almost half their healing and still be good abilities. Nerfing the duration on them I also see as very unfun, as it will mostly still be an invulnerability ult, just it'll homogenize the support ult and make every support ult feel the same, even though they have all these other cool mechanics attached. Lastly, the invulnerability of these ults causes a form of satanic bargain with the DPS ults, where stuff like Storm's ult is allowed to be an almost guaranteed kill because it's expected to be countered by a support ult, forcing your team to have healer ults ready. In my opinion, this makes the driving force of it behind it a very ult economy based meta. The core of it, sure, I pretty much do agree. Either that, or you go back to the take from the previous one where you buff the more mid ults or make the frequency of the ults go down and make the mid ults be better. So add a Morlock's res and like Rocket Raccoons and or the other supports. Jeff's ultimate, they're a bit better, relatively speaking, and has a bit more expression rather than just pressing the invulnerability button. And I kind of like the previous reply where Invisible Woman's best assets are not her ultimate and just it's the other parts of her kit. However, the point where on the first point here where you said nerfing the cost of the support ults doesn't change the fact they're mostly invulnerable. If the DPS ult frequency goes down, like it makes them more meaningful, and you can actually go for trades where you allow them to wipe and then you retake afterwards. So sorry for the Overwatch comparison. I know you guys are tired of hearing it. In a lot of cases in Overwatch where you didn't run a defensive ult against Zarya's Graviton and Hanzo Dragon Strike combo. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. It's a big Vortex ultimate comboed with the big AoE ultimate for the non-Overwatch players, okay? In a lot of cases, teams would evolve and the other ultimates were good outside of the defensive ults, because you did have some options for defensive ults like Lucio Beat or Zenyatta Transcendence, or if you played other heroes, you could just take the team wipe and then retake with the other, non-conventional defensive ults like an Ana Nano Boost and Rally with Brig if you played Ana Brig into it. I do think like the Grav Dragons or like the big Storm ults in Marvel Rivals case or the Psylocke ult, if the frequency of it goes down because ult charge across the board is lower, then the necessity for the defensive ult isn't as high. And when I say global nerfs to all ults, I mean all ults, not just support ults. I think your point is you're nerfing just the cost of support ults. We're talking about all of them, and I think that would somewhat solve the frustration of playing against triple support. But in any case, I like your last point. Maybe I wouldn't use the word satanic bargain with the DPS ults, because you can absolutely survive against like a Storm ult or some other ult if you just pocket each other. There's a way to live as a Cloak and Dagger with like a bubble and you shoot the other support and the other support shoots you back. Same with Luna if you're just clapping your teammates almost at cheeks, your teammates while the other supports while they heal you. There's a way around it, but it's not as obvious right now. But I do think the player base will evolve to kind of like not go for that bargain, or maybe you just slightly nerf the actual damage numbers. Like just like there's a way to kind of tune the numbers down so they're not as like inflated, because in the games like this you're getting 50,000 damage, 100,000 healing. It's actually kind of crazy how high the numbers are, and things aren't actually dying in a lot of cases. So where am I going with this? All in all, let's just go back to what I was saying earlier as a solution from triple support. But right now, triple support is still pretty decent, but it's actually not as frequent in my experience in the recent patch. Next hot take is Cloak and Dagger after this patch is C tier at best, the only S tier support being Loki and Invisible Woman. That is certainly a take I disagree with you with. I think Cloak and Dagger is like high B tier still. Definitely not C. I do think Loki, Invisible Woman, and Luna are still the top choices. Maybe Luna slightly a bit lower, but she's still an absolutely amazing pick, simply because of the team up with like Namor, who's like picked so much because of all the dive right now. He gets banned often. Even low-key, Iron Fist got played a little bit in some of my games because he has that new like tank percentage buster kind of style. Just a lot of people don't play him in general, but when they do, I've actually been pretty impressed with how Iron Fist plays. People forget there's an Iron Fist Luna team up where Luna gets like a boop, a defensive option or something like that, which is kind of cool. In any case, I do agree, Loki, Invisible Woman, Luna is the one I'll add is your S tier supports. Cloak and Dagger, high B tier, probably A tier, close to S tier for like your average player, simply because of the simplicity of the kit and the reliability. You don't really have to like have great aim. There's a really high floor to get really great baseline value, and her ultimate is still really good. It comes out way faster. You definitely die way less to Magneto, so the fact that you're not dying as frequently to Magneto's ult when you Cloak and Dagger ult means it's actually just better value on this patch in a lot of cases for some players versus just like using it on the old patch and dying every time to Magneto. You know what I mean? So, ooh, hot take. Former Overwatch players in Marvel Rivals are bringing their toxicity to Marvel Rivals. This game has hardly been out for a month. Okay, it's been almost 3 months. And we have already players bullying other players for not being good enough, or for picking any hero besides the ones that they deem meta, or for picking any comp besides what they're familiar with from other games. Roles in Rivals are not as strict in Overwatch, and most players can only play a few characters well. It can be better to let someone stay on a suboptimal pick you can't play rather than a meta character that you can't. And more importantly, Rivals is a video game. People play it to have fun. The salt and toxicity in ranked really kills my motivation to climb. I actually agree with most of your points, except for the fact that Overwatch players are bringing their toxicity. I mean, there are a lot of toxic players who left Overwatch, and they're just toxic players in general, but I disagree with that point. But the point that you're making afterwards, where you're saying it's better to let someone stay on a suboptimal pick rather than a meta character that you can't, is actually a point that goes into Overwatch and goes into any game. I would rather have that Aurelia one trick play their best hero. I'd rather have my Mercy player just play Mercy. I'd rather have the Rocket only player just play Rocket, because it actually gives you the better chance to win if they absolutely suck at the other heroes. Like, that's why for me, when people ask, what do you think about these one tricks? I'm like, in a game where you're allowed to pick any hero, every game has a one trick in a team-based game. Every single game. League of Legends, Dota, Overwatch, Valorant. There's going to be the Yoru, the Jet one tricks. One tricks are going to one trick is the takeaway point here. And like, some people be like, wow, you're letting them do what they can. They're not doing their best to win. I always say that they're probably just worse than the other heroes. And like, it's a pickup game, right? If you're in an organized scrim team environment, then I don't think any team in the world, any real professional team would have a simple hero one trick, unless that hero is an outlier and fits in every single comp, like a Tracer specialist, sure, in Overwatch, or like a Doctor Strange specialist or Magneto specialist here, because he can simply just fit in every comp. But like, in those environments, you obviously want some flexibility, but in a rank solo queue, you have to manage your expectations. One tricks are gonna one trick. The best thing you can do is just work around them, especially if you're an adaptable player. I'm a pretty adaptable player. I know I play a lot of Loki, but he's an outlier. I think he's just good everywhere. But like, people really ask me to switch, like, I'll play Adam for you. I'll play like Mantis for you if you want the team up. Like, it's actually fine. I don't mind, simply because they only know how to play one hero. I want the best chance to win, and that for me gives me the best chance to win if you play your best, because I'm naturally flexible and you're not. So you know what? I'll do the splits, you can't. I can do the limbo, you can't, because I can flex, baby. Hot take, Magik should not have iframes. She already gets bonus shields from her attacks and is completely invulnerable plus invisible during the portal. She can wombo combo most of the roster, so she doesn't need the iframes. Plus, the iframe part isn't intuitive at all. Finally, Magik is currently one of the highest win rate characters in Season 1 across all ranks and isn't reliant on a team up. The iframe should be the first to go when they nerf her. I disagree on the part where you say it's not intuitive. You know, when she does a damage rotation, she'll probably portal, and you have a small window when she comes out of it, so it's actually a lot more predictable and more intuitive than you think. I'd say if you were to nerf her, you lower, like, her risk is like getting in your face and getting into melee range. And to be a melee hero, almost all of them have some sort of like either A, way to escape, or B, a way to kind of like build up some natural tankiness. Like Magik and Black Panther build up those shields, or Psylocke has to like dash out, or like with crazy mobility, or go invisible, or Spider-Man has to grapple out. Like, there's some risk versus reward. And I actually think the iframe part is one of the cooler things to do you can do on this melee DPS hero. I think Rivals does a really good job on how they made their melee DPS heroes have so many different ways to kind of like navigate the battlefield. And yeah, I think the portal is a cool thing. You can choose between the demon or choose between the slash when you come out, but it's a pretty predictable timing. Again, if you were to ask me what to nerf, I would actually nerf either maybe slightly nerf the shields she gets when she goes in, because your average player can't maybe like burst her down, she's allowed to do her full combo. Or maybe like when she's portaling in like Darkchild, she travels some crazy distance in that portal. You can cut the distance on it maybe a little bit. That's my take. Maybe that's a hot one. I don't really play that much Magik. Actually, I play zero Magik. I play Loki, and if I copy a Magik, I'm like, oh shit. Because like, I just press all my buttons and I'm like, oh, I hope I'm doing the right thing. I don't know. When I play Magik, I'm feeding when I copy her by accident. But in any case, that's where I would go with her. I think she is okay with the iframes. It lets her dodge some pretty sneaky stuff too, which is a cool part of her kit. Next hot take is you can just play quick play and versus the AI, and you don't have to play rank to have fun. I played this game with my 8-year-old kid, and we are both bad, but as long as we're playing together, we are having fun. I don't think this is a hot take. I mean, I agree. Enjoy your dad life. Or your mom life. Enjoy time with your kiddo, man. Moon Knight requires more skill than people think, but his hit registration is terrible. If you're aiming at a target, yeah, because of the way the projectile is, you kind of have to lead your shot, but shooting the Ankh isn't very hard to do. I would say he's a pretty low base kind of hero. One of the easier DPSs to play by far. A little simple mobility and just shoot the Ankh for the most part. But in the sense that it's more than people think, maybe slightly, but not really. I think he is pretty easy. His hit registration is mostly due to the projectile nature, and maybe you're not realizing you have to lead your shot when you shoot a person. I don't know. I feel like his hit registration is the same as any other hero. Okay, my hot take is that the game shouldn't be balanced around pro level gameplay, because that's only a tiny fraction of the player base. it shouldn't actually be balanced around the most casual players either. The tricky part is finding the right level. Just because something is meta at the top of the ranks doesn't necessarily mean it should be nerfed. There will always be a meta at pro level play, and while it is good and ideal to strive towards a balance that allows you to use all kinds of different teams, it's also unrealistic, and you shouldn't mess up the game for all the players while working towards that. Luckily, it hasn't happened in Rivals. It's just my take on balance. I don't think this is a hot take. I think that's actually well put. A lot of people say it should be top-down balance because, you know, the highest and the pros can like use the hero kit to its maximum to the highest skill ceiling and blah, 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 blah. And like, that's the output you should expect. And then it makes heroes that have very high skill ceilings atrocious for lower ranked players because they don't have that sort of like mechanical skill. But on the same vein, you can't balance and simplify heroes even more to make the low skill floor heroes too good. There is a fine balance between the two. Overwatch does this a lot with like Sojourn, where she's like really good at the high levels, but like traditionally performs terribly in low ranks because people can't aim. Same with Winston, who's really good at high ranks, but has a terrible win rate in low ranks simply because of the finesse. And I actually think it's okay in the sense where, like, you know, you have disproportionate win rates depending on the rank you play in, and you want to find the fine line. The one thing I'll add is it's not just balance around what pick rates and stats on the pro level or the casual players, but also community sentiment and what people perceive to be strong, perceive what's not strong. Because I guarantee you the meta and Rivals in different regions may vary as well. It was very evident in Overwatch where Asia loved dive, but like, you know, Europe and North America really love slower brawl kind of style archetypes. And then like, you know, your North Americans would argue that this and that needs to be nerfed, while, you know, the Asian and APAC regions really like preferred and called for nerfs on this. And they're both, their perception on what was strong was very different, even though like they have their statistics on what is objectively performing well and what isn't. So you have to find that fine line. So not really a hot take. You just kind of have to balance is tricky. You literally can't please everybody. Next hot take: if a strategist needs to peel every single time a person dives them, they are the problem, not their team. They are either missing their skill shot, bad positioning, or playing their cooldowns wrong. That's a hot take because it depends on like who's diving and how many people are diving. In some cases, you can navigate a single person with your kit, like a Luna, like a Mantis. You could have been outplayed with the sleep or the freeze dart. There are ways to deal with one single person, literally on every single hero. If I can on the top of my head, yeah, like Adam can self heal. He can soul bond in a single dive. A Rocket can dash away. Jeff can run away. Luna can freeze. Mantis, yeah. I feel like everybody can sort of get away in one, but they're not the problem if they're sending 3 people after them. Your options, if you're getting dove by 3 people, you either A, you need peel, or B, you trade. So like they will die, but your team has to do something about their backline. If 3 people are diving me as a support, I will do my best to play Dead by Daylight and live, which is actually the best value thing I can do. Survive as long as I can. Survive longer than my team doing the same thing for them, or at least making use of the fact that I've drawn the 3 people towards me. I'm a pseudo tank as a support. I'm making space that means there's 3 less people shooting my team. So my team is at a 5v3 while I pull all 3 and I survive. That's actually your best option. But yeah, this one is a depends. Hot take: supports will be hard for the game to tune in the long run because the supports lack meaningful utility abilities. They largely function around their raw outputs of healing and damage, which makes them either discreetly good or bad. I think this is a hot take and disagree, because I actually think a lot of the supports have pretty cool kits. I think Invisible Woman, like somebody earlier mentioned, like one of the best assets of Invisible Woman are her other parts of her kit, like the pushback, the pull, the vortex. I think those are really cool. I think Loki has runes and he can teleport and fake people out. Adams is kind of like a little boring. His utility is like dealing damage back to get him away. But I actually think the supports, minus maybe like Rocket, kind of feel like pretty fun and meaningful in terms of utility to help deal with like other parts of the game. I think because raw output of healing and damage in this game is just so high in general that like that ends up being the main focus, which also calls the attention where earlier I was mentioning how we should nerf the global all charge across to let the neutral kits shine a little bit more, to let the utility show a bit more. This is also another one of those arguments where like it can help make the utility shine a bit more, make that the option to deal with the Wolverine coming in instead of like the Wolverine. If I'm Sue Storm and I'm Invisible Woman, like my utility to push the Black Panther or the Wolverine back is more important than me just pressing disappear and just solving that problem entirely. So this take, it's less about the meaningful utility abilities. I just still think the frequency of ultimates for the defensive ultimates is just too high. If I don't always have the ult available, it makes the other utility stuff shine. Hot take, you're wrong about Squirrel Girl. Her ult is disgusting on certain maps in certain areas, and once you understand her kit, you can actually have a 3 to 5 second window between jumps and an acorn throw every 5 seconds. Her ult is underrated. You need to flank and use it wisely and not just throw it out in the middle of battle. I agree, her ultimate is like really good in terms of shotgunning it and like just basically one-shotting people, but like I don't think she's like OP by any means. And I think this was from last week's hot takes or whatever, where I don't think she was OP, but she's like okay and serviceable. You say there's a 3 to 5 second between jumps, but her jumps are kind of like there to take a new angle. It's a nice utility, but the acorn throw still is like a slow skill shot that needs to hit. Like obviously if it hits, it's really good, but like that's the thing with her. She's a bit of a spammer. Like these multiple parts of her kit need to land before like she gets like kill confirmation. She ends up like getting a lot of damage by just chipping away at it. But in turn, because it doesn't like necessarily kill in a lot of cases unless you combo it with your shotgun or you combo it with an acorn, it just kind of feeds the enemy support's ult charge in a lot of cases. And because the ults are so damn strong, the defensive ones especially, and they come up so frequently, it kind of nullifies a lot of what she can do, which is why I don't feel like Squirrel Girl is like the top of my list for DPS heroes versus someone who can actually confirm the kills pretty reliably. Something with a faster projectile like a Bucky with a pop 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 or a hook and then an uppercut and then like bring them into you so you can actually reliably hit multiple shots versus Squirrel Girl just throwing a couple of acorns with a bit of time and space in between them, where your acorn may or may not hit, and if it doesn't hit, then they don't even take 2 or 3 back-to-back shots. If you miss a single one of the back-to-backs, like they probably get it healed in that time. Maybe hot take, Human Torch sucks on every level. He is not fun to play as because of how slow and clunky he feels, and he is not fun to play against because of his fire pools and him being a flyer, as well as having one of the least interesting ults in the game. All that while also being a low to mid tier, meaning all you can do is buff him and make him even more annoying to play against. I will say it's early, right? There may be like some godlike Human Torches that are like slowly coming out the woodworks and like figuring it out, but I don't think the flying archetype is that popular, minus, you know, Storm. But like Iron Man went down in popularity. I feel like a lot of people prefer like the Psylocks, the Black Panthers, the Magics, and like the Buckies right now way more than like the flying archetype. And because I don't see them that often, I will agree in the sense that like I don't feel like he's that impressive. I've not been impressed by a single Human Torch. Like a big part of his burst is actually diving in on those pools, but if he dives in, he puts himself at risk. So like a lot of them don't do it. So he just ends up being a very like weak poke hero where like you might as well just play Storm instead of him. And like the whole like zoning thing with the fire pool with the fences, it feels a little inconsistent because you can't always pull them off in every game. Like you try to set it up and like it just doesn't work, and then you're out of the cooldown for like 10 to 15 seconds, which means like the fight may be over by the time you get it again. If it comes up, it can be nice, but the damage is kind of slow, and yeah, he just has not felt that impressive. But I'm not really sure what they could do other than maybe give him like some tankiness to incentivize him to dive in, and tankiness when he dives in specifically, like depending on how many fire pools he dives into, he gets a little bit of shield, so like he's not literally at risk once he like goes in your face, so that he has a little bit more like tools to get away from the air, and B, like have that agency to manage the risk versus reward of making that play. And then obviously if he comes closer to your team, like he's a little bit easier to kill than playing, you know, 10 years away. Also, Hela's really good on this patch because they nerfed the damage fall off, which means if Hela's not banned, like Human Torch is a lot harder to play. So, you know, I think him in a vacuum, not terrible, but the way the meta is and how good sustain is and how you can get chipped out of the sky by the buffed Adam Warlock, who gets played a lot more now, and the Hela's a little tough to play Mr. Johnny Storm right now. All right, I think that's it for the hot takes. Leave yours in the comments. Agree or disagree, it's all good. Let's have a good, healthy discussion and see you later. Peace.